For those of you that have taken resident under a number of rocks for the last 5 or 6 years, Walter White is the main character of the crime and drama-based TV show Breaking Bad. His arc over the course of the show's 6 seasons, which transforms him from a regular, down-to-earth husband and father into a drug overlord that thinks nothing of murdering anyone that stands in his way, is probably the main reason why Breaking Bad has received such universal praise and is considered, if not the single greatest TV show ever made, certainly one of them. But what is it about this arc of White's that makes it work so well? Why did the viewers of this show care so much about what happened to a man that had made so many suffer for his own ends? What is it about Walter White that made us root for him in spite of all the terrible things he'd done? Well, to begin to answer this, we need to go back to the very beginning of the show. Well, okay, not quite the very beginning, but the first episode at least. The custom in most forms of fiction is that the main character is someone relatively normal who is either living an unfulfilling life or is put into difficult circumstances through no fault of their own. The first third of the first episode, titled simply Pilot, shows White to be both of these things. It isn't actually until about 50 minutes into the episode that he is diagnosed with lung cancer and told he has, at best, 2 years to live. Prior to that, we see that there isn't much wrong with the life he has. He has a loving wife, a son with a second child on the way, and a number of other friends that he has good relationships with. It's just a very unfulfilling life. The jobs he works are stressful at best and humiliating at worst, and he is generally just tired of the same old routine. I think one of my favourite scenes from the pilot is when he can't get the glove compartment in his car to shut. It seems a bit silly to think that a shoddy glove compartment door would have in some way contributed to White's motivations to become a drug dealer, but that's really why it works so well. It's such a small thing, but the way White gets so annoyed by it shows how stressed he is and how close he is to being pushed over the edge. The diagnosis of lung cancer should be enough to make us sympathise with White, but it's what we see before that that helps us to relate to what he is going through, and it's that that is really the key to why we root for him later on. Of course, the other custom with most main characters is that we are able to see things through their eyes, and, in many cases, project our own persona onto them. We may not have all had to go through the pain of being told we have a deadly disease. However, the fear of such a thing is something we can all relate to. Hence, the scene where White is diagnosed is shot in POV. We are literally seeing things through his eyes. Relating to White is also an important factor when it comes to his ultimate decision to enter the drug business. Now, of course, the creator Vince Gilligan doesn't expect people to relate to the idea of turning to crime to pay for cancer treatment. What he expects you to relate to is that desire to do something crazy just to make your life easier. We've all kind of jokingly thought to ourselves about robbing a bank or breaking the law in some other way that would make us rich, just because we all like the idea of having a lot of money. Some of us might even have come across people in our lives that we kind of wish weren't around. Maybe they're a difficult co-worker or a friend of a friend that you don't get along with, or they're dating a person you have a crush on. We secretly want something to happen to them, or that they just move away. Maybe deep down, as horrible as it may sound, we actually do wish they were dead. Walter White has most likely had these kinds of thoughts go through his head for years prior to the start of the series. And now he has lung cancer, he simply figures he has nothing to lose. So his want to do something like this is not only understandable, but it's also, in a strange way, kind of relatable. Of course, we would never follow through with these ideas of grand theft or murder because A, it's a terrible thing to do, and B, we know perfectly well we could never get away with it. So this is where the first big suspension of disbelief comes in. White is a smart man. Anyone that's watched this show will tell you that. So why would he choose to do this when he knows what a terrible thing it is and that there is very little chance he will get away with it? Well, he wouldn't. In the same way that fish don't really talk, cars don't really travel through time, and men can't really fly, this isn't something that could ever really happen, and that is why this show exists. Even though fantasy is only a specific genre of fiction, I've always felt that all fiction needs some element of fantasy in it. Otherwise, why is it even a story? If it could really happen, why not just wait for it to become reality? What Gilligan is trying to do here is simply ask, what if? What if someone were to go through with the kinds of things we all secretly wish we could do? Which in many ways helps us to put ourselves in White's shoes, and in turn hope that he succeeds. Perhaps the title of this video is the wrong question to ask, because the key to the appeal of White's character isn't so much that we like him or what he is doing, it's that we root for him to succeed because we know what he was going through when he started. Now, I have to admit, when I was first introduced to the character of Pinkman, I found it a little jarring. There was such a polarizing nature to his character. But this once again is another factor that makes us root for White. As far as the people he works with in the meth business are concerned, he is still the most down-to-earth of them. Pinkman is a washed-up, bratish, lazy nothing that is in the business as much of the drugs themselves as the money. Tuco Salamanca is a power-lusting lunatic that will beat a man to death just for the hell of it. And Gus is the evil overlord that will kill and threaten anyone who even considers standing in his way. He is perhaps not that different from the Walter White we see at the end of Season 4, but with the key difference that we are introduced to him like this. We are given no reason to sympathise with him, and he never feels remorse for what he does. Of course, they had to have White already know Pinkman prior to the events of the show, to give him a way to track him down. But I actually think that fact also really helped the chemistry, no pun intended, between the two of them. Making it a relationship where they already feel like they know each other means there is a natural connection right away. I'm not sure if Gilligan had the intention of giving their relationship a father-son vibe from the beginning, since I know he originally planned to have Pinkman die at the end of Season 1, but that was definitely the impression I got right from the start. This really helps to give us an instant emotional connection with Pinkman, and since we root for White, we may over time start to see Pinkman as like his apprentice. So if White is the anti-hero in this story, what is Pinkman? Is he going to have the polarizing character arc of a drug dealer slash addict that turns into a better person? Or does he start out as a good person who makes a mess of his life that White simply leads further down the wrong path? Well, actually it's neither of these things. In contrast to White, Pinkman's character doesn't really have much of an arc. In terms of his overall personality, he's pretty much the same guy at the end of the series that he is when we first meet him. Oh sure, we see a surprising softer side to him in later episodes, but it's not really the result of anything he goes through during the events of the series. That's just how he naturally is deep down. The only thing connected to Pinkman that could be seen as an arc is his relationship with White. In the same way as White's character transforms from a man who cries after being forced to kill a man that he knows would have murdered his entire family, into a man that considers blowing off half of the face of his enemy a proud victory, the relationship of the show's two main characters goes through a number of complicated changes. In Season 1, they are essentially co-workers. They don't really want anything to do with one another, but they kind of force themselves to get along because there is no other way either of them can expect to make any money otherwise. In Season 2, there are a few more signs that there is more of a father-son-like relationship starting to blossom, most notably in the episode 4 Days Out, where there is actually one point where Pinkman messes up and White sarcastically remarks, "Well done, Jesse, as always." Much like how a father would talk to his child if they broke something. This is another key factor as to why we grow to like the two of them. They are a family, and as time goes on and White distances himself more and more from his actual family, they start to see that all they have is each other. There is a moment in the final episode of Season 2 where White actually calls Pinkman son that I felt was a little too on the nose, although I liked the second time he does it in Season 3 a lot more, because it happened in another key turning point for White's character, where his pride starts to take over, and he starts caring less about why he's cooking meth and more just about simply being the best at it. Season 4 gives us two clear signs of White's love for Pinkman when he tells Gus that if he kills Pinkman, you don't have me, and then later in the season when he accidentally calls his actual son Jesse. It's clear that White's genuine love for Pinkman is always there, right up until the final season when he asks to have him killed. It's just that his pride and his fear for his family's safety has overpowered whatever genuine connection he has with Pinkman. It's for this reason I feel that by the time the series is in its final season, the audience's allegiance has switched away from White and more towards Pinkman. Pinkman suffers a lot more during the final season. His motivations for wanting to kill White and later arrested are more about revenge than bringing White to any kind of justice. We certainly feel by this point that he really deserves some kind of comeuppance for everything he's done, including things at Pinkman's expense. So the mere fact that Pinkman is trying to give us that is enough for us to root for him. Which brings us to the last question, or should I say questions, of all. Do we want Pinkman to kill White in the final episode? And why didn't he? Well, as far as the first question is concerned, I think that's really up to the viewer. It's really just a question of what matters more to you, White getting what is coming to him, or the importance of his relationship with Pinkman. But after all that White did, including hiring a group of men to have him killed, Pinkman doesn't kill him. This could simply be because he knows White will likely die from having been shot anyway, and he realizes he doesn't have to kill him. Unlike White, he's above the idea of killing for the sake of it, or just for the satisfaction of being the person to pull the trigger. It's also possible that he knows White went there with the intention of killing him, but in the heat of the moment, chose not to. He literally took a bullet for him and at the same time set him free. Well, kinda. I imagine the police would still be after him. So I like to think his not killing White is simply returning the favour. While White may have been playing Pinkman throughout the whole series right from the point when he threatens to turn him in the first episode, ultimately his friendship matters to him more, so in the end, White still saves him. This, to me, is the final piece in the puzzle of what it is about White that makes us root for him. He does a lot of terrible things, and his motives are often selfish and blinded by his own ego. Indeed, there is no question in my mind that he went to hell when he died. But you know deep down he's doing it all for good reasons. His motives are good, even if his methods are not. Ultimately, when it really matters the most, he will do the right thing.